Ever dream of owning a slice of a Manhattan skyscraper?
Sure.
Or maybe just dipping your toes into the London housing market without needing a king's ransom?
Yeah, it's a fascinating time for real estate, right?
It really is. Today, we're diving deep into this world of fractional ownership and tokenization. It's kind of shaking up everything we thought we knew about buying, selling, and even just betting on property values.
For sure. It's opening up a whole new world of opportunities for really anyone, even if you're just starting out as an investor or you're a seasoned pro. We've got a whole bunch of sources to unpack here, looking at different companies tackling this from different angles.
Yeah, like DEVVE. They're building this super fast blockchain specifically for tokenizing things like real estate.
Right, right. And then there's Parkle. They're kind of doing this wild thing where you can trade on like citywide real estate indexes. It's like instead of buying a share of a building, you're buying a share of the entire New York market, for instance.
Exactly. And then there's Propchain using blockchain and AI to streamline how real estate deals get financed. And then we've got UBXS, a token aiming to make transactions in both the physical and the virtual real estate world a lot easier and cheaper.
Lots to cover, lots to cover.
Okay, so our mission today, if you will, is to really figure out what this all means for different players in the game. Like, what's in it for investors, both big and small? What about realtors, real estate buyers themselves, and even like huge institutions that own tons of rental properties or condo buildings? Where do they fit in?
Great plan. Let's dive in.
Let's start with DEVVE. They're all about building this really solid, scalable foundation. They call it a layer 1 blockchain. And they're designing it to handle all the complexities of turning real estate into these digital tokens.
Right. And to be clear, they're not building platforms for buying and selling fractions of properties themselves. It's more like they're building the highway, so to speak.
Yeah.
They're building the infrastructure for all those other platforms to exist and connect. Their token, DEVVE, is kind of like the fuel for that highway. It helps make transactions happen smoothly and potentially cuts down on fees on their upcoming exchange, which is a whole other exciting thing they're working on.
Okay, so faster, smoother transactions, lower fees. That's good for everyone.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not just speed either. DEVVE is all about doing things the right way. They're working on meeting all those regulatory requirements and figuring out how to mesh with existing systems. It's all about bringing this tech to the mainstream, making it actually usable for everyday transactions.
That's really important. And they also have this Evergreen Fund, right?
Oh, yeah, the Evergreen Fund. That's pretty cool.
It's focused on ESG investments, those environmental, social, and governance initiatives. That's a big deal for institutional investors who want to make sure their money is going towards sustainable projects.
Yeah, and that's definitely attracting a lot of attention.
So if you're a big player with a lot of money to invest, DEVVE is saying, hey, we're the responsible, forward-thinking option here.
Exactly. Jump on board.
All right, let's shift gears. Let's talk about Parkle. This one is pretty different. Instead of owning a tiny piece of an actual property, with Parkle, you're trading on the price movements of entire cities. Like, how wild is that?
I know. It's like, forget picking individual stocks. Let's just bet on the whole stock market. Only here, it's the real estate market in a city like Miami or London or wherever.
Right. So how would our listeners use this? How would they actually benefit from Parkle?
Well, first of all, you can get started with just $1. You don't need tens of thousands for a down payment. That's a big deal, especially if you're young or just starting to build your investment portfolio.
So you can kind of dip your toes in the water without going all in.
Exactly. And it's not just about betting on prices going up either. You can actually bet on them going down too, which you can't really do with traditional real estate investing.
That's true. It's way more flexible.
Way more.
Yeah.
And they have their own data team, Parkle Labs, constantly crunching numbers and updating those city indexes every single day.
So it's a pretty up-to-date picture of what's happening in the market, which is huge.
Absolutely.
And this isn't just for individual investors, right? I mean, how could realtors or big institutional investors use something like Parkle?
Yeah, great question. Realtors, for example, could use Parkle's data to advise their clients, give them a better sense of what's happening in the market, whether it's a good time to buy or sell. And institutions, they could potentially use it to hedge their bets, protect themselves if the market takes a downturn.
That makes sense. It's like having this extra layer of information and strategy that just wasn't possible before. Okay, moving right along to Propchain. They're all about shaking up the world of real estate financing, which is traditionally this very slow, very complicated, very expensive process.
Yeah, full of paperwork and middlemen.
Exactly. Propchain is trying to bring it all into the digital age using blockchain and AI. So how would this actually impact our listeners, whether they're trying to get financing for a project or they're the ones lending money?
Well, the big idea is cutting out the middleman. Propchain connects borrowers and lenders directly, making the process a lot faster and potentially cheaper for everyone involved.
So for someone who needs financing for a real estate project, this could mean quicker access to funds and maybe better loan terms, right?
Yeah, that's the hope.
And for big institutions with tons of capital to lend, it means they can potentially get better returns, and it's a more efficient way to manage their investments.
Right. It streamlines the whole thing.
And they've got the PROPC token, right? What's the point of that? Is it just a currency?
It's more than that. It's like a key that unlocks all kinds of cool features within their ecosystem. Holding and using the PROPC token can get you better loan terms, higher loan amounts, stuff like that. You also get a say in how the platform develops through governance mechanisms. And eventually, it might even be used to pay for transaction fees within the network.
So it's not just about buying and selling the token itself. It's about having a stake in the whole Propchain ecosystem.
Exactly. It's designed to add real value.
And they're really serious about being transparent and playing by the rules, which is important for those big institutional investors, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They're based in Luxembourg, which has a pretty strict regulatory environment, and they're even getting audited by Ernst & Young. That kind of transparency goes a long way in building trust.
It definitely does. It shows they're serious about building something legitimate and sustainable. All right, last but not least, we've got UBXS, or as some folks call it, Pixos. They're trying to bridge the gap between the physical and virtual real estate worlds using blockchain. How does their UBXS token fit into all of this?
Well, think of it like a reward program for participating in real estate transactions. The token offers discounts on fees for everyone involved: buyers, sellers, even real estate agents.
So if I'm buying a house and I use UBXS, I can save money on closing costs.
That's the idea. They want to make the whole process cheaper and smoother, and the token is the incentive for people to use their platform.
It's kind of brilliant, really.
It is, and they're not limiting themselves to just real estate either. They have ambitions to expand into other industries like e-commerce, using UBXS as a general payment solution because it's fast and secure.
So they're thinking big picture, really trying to make blockchain technology accessible for everyday transactions.
For sure. And one more thing to keep in mind is that all of these projects, they're all about making real estate more accessible for the average person. You don't need to be a millionaire to own a piece of property anymore.
That's really the key takeaway here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so for anyone listening who's thinking, this is all great, but where can I actually get my hands on these tokens? Well, you can find both OPROPC for Propchain and UBXS for Pixos on the Bitget exchange.
Yeah, always good to do your research and figure out the best way to get involved.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's bring it all back to you, our listener. How can all this translate into actual benefits, actual profits for different folks in the real estate world? Let's start with the individual investor. How do you see these trends playing out for them?
Well, the biggest thing is the lower barrier to entry. Fractional ownership means you don't need a ton of money to get started.
Right.
You can diversify your portfolio more easily, owning tiny pieces of different properties in different markets.
Makes sense.
And then you have platforms like Parkle. It's a whole new way to profit from real estate price movements, almost like day trading, but for real estate.
And with Propchain, you can get in on the real estate financing game,
Yeah,
potentially earn returns by lending money to projects.
exactly. And then within the ecosystems of DEVVE and UBXS, just holding and using those tokens can get you perks like lower fees, access to special features, or even staking rewards. There are lots of ways to potentially make money.
And what about real estate agents? How could all this change the game for them?
For them, it's all about efficiency and expanding their reach. Tokenization can streamline transactions, cut down on paperwork, and ultimately make the whole process faster and less stressful.
Yeah, nobody likes dealing with mountains of paperwork.
Exactly. And because fractional ownership opens up the market to a global pool of investors, agents can suddenly connect with way more potential clients, not just the folks in their local area. And let's not forget the UBXS token and its built-in fee discounts for agents.
That's a nice incentive to get on board.
It is.
Okay, so let's say I'm someone who wants to buy a house. How do all these trends benefit me?
Well, fractional ownership can be a really good stepping stone if you can't afford to buy a whole house right away. You can start small, build equity, and eventually trade up. And it also opens up the possibility of co-owning a really high-value property that would have been out of reach before.
It's like pooling your resources with others to buy something amazing.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell, it can be much easier than with traditional real estate. Selling tokens representing fractions of a property can be a lot faster and more liquid.
Makes sense. Okay, last group, we need to talk about those huge institutions that own tons of rental properties and condos. What's in it for them?
For them, it's about unlocking the value that's trapped in their existing portfolios. Tokenization gives them new ways to raise capital. They can offer fractional ownership to a global pool of investors instead of just going through traditional financing channels. It's a whole new game for them.
Right, and they can explore these innovative revenue streams, like maybe they offer tokenized rentals or they set up these shared ownership models where people can own a tiny piece of a big development.
Exactly, yeah. And again, DEVVE's Evergreen Fund is a big draw for institutions that are into ESG investing.
Yeah.
It's all about sustainability and making a positive impact while also making money.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, it's clear that this whole world of fractional ownership and tokenization, it's not just a fad. It's really changing how we think about real estate.
Yeah, for sure. It's about making things more accessible, more liquid, more efficient. It's about creating new opportunities for everyone.
Exactly. And each of these projects, they're tackling it from a different angle, but they're all contributing to building this new real estate ecosystem.
A more democratic ecosystem, one might say.
So here's a thought for you, our listener. Think about everything we've discussed today. How do you see fractional ownership and tokenization impacting your own financial future?
Or even your neighborhood.
Yeah, or your neighborhood. How might this change the way we live, the way we invest, the way we interact with the places we call home?
It's a big question, and we don't have all the answers yet.
But that's what makes it so exciting, right?
Yeah,
It's all unfolding right now.
definitely. If you want to learn more about any of the specific projects we talked about, I highly recommend checking out their websites, their white papers, all that good stuff.
Dive in, do your research, and see where you think this whole thing is headed. Because it's going to be a wild ride.
That's for sure.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See you then.